I'm going to be talking about a topic that is very often misunderstood within specifically some of the witchcraft communities and also within the larger community as a whole. And that topic is on lineage. Now, what exactly does lineage confer, and what does that word actually mean to us? And I am going to be speaking specifically from the perspective of British Traditional Witchcraft, and specifically in terms of what that means to us in our traditions, the Horsa and Sacred Pentagraph traditions. To me, what lineage means is that it is a very definite, traceable, verifiable lineage that is passed on through initiatory witchcraft, and that is passed on through a teacher who has received initiations themselves in that particular lineage. Now, a lineage is passed down, but it differs from tradition to tradition. So within the British Traditional Witchcraft family, what may be valid for one tradition may not necessarily apply to a different tradition. So when we consider the lineage, what we look at are a few aspects. We look at the initiation ritual itself. Were you initiated into whatever tradition using that particular tradition's initiation ritual for whatever grade it is? But let's just say for the first grade, the first degree, were you initiated with that specific initiation ritual for that specific tradition? That's the first thing. And then you would have experienced the mysteries of that specific tradition, and you would have been vouched for by the community, or you would be able to be vouched for by the community. Now, vouching is a slightly separate topic, but to go over it very briefly, what it means is if you ask for a vouch, or you are receiving a vouch, or you are vouched for, what it means is that you are saying that you are who you say you are, and you belong to the lineage that you claim to belong to. There are a few aspects that actually dictate whether or not you have received a legitimate initiation and that you belong to a specific lineage. Now, there are various orders, there are various paths, there are various traditions within witchcraft, and one of the things that I think people really don't understand and should keep in mind when considering the idea of lineage is that you can only belong to a specific lineage if you were going through that specific initiation ritual of that tradition. So let's say, for example, my teacher, who legitimately has been through quite a few different initiations into different paths or orders, I cannot say that I take on the lineage of all of the paths that he has initiation into, because I was not initiated into all of those different things. I can only claim lineage to Horsa and Sacred Pentagraph through that lineage. I cannot say that I am also something else. So another example would be if I started a new tradition, just for argument's sake. Let's say I started the snow witchery tradition. Well, I live in Canada and there's always snow, so let's pretend for a minute I'm starting the snow witchery tradition. And I initiate people and into my snow witchery tradition, which has its own initiation rituals. It's a whole new tradition or whatever. And so the people who now belong to my snow witchery tradition, they cannot claim Horsa or Sacred Pentagraph lineage because they were not initiated into Horsa or Sacred Pentagraph through those different specific initiation rituals. And the Horsa and Sacred Pentagraph traditions are not going to vouch for them because they now belong to an entirely different tradition called the Snow Witchery tradition. So even though I can claim lineage, those who came after me cannot claim lineage to the Horsa and Sacred Pentagraph. If I was, for argument's sake, doing this new tradition called the Snow Witchery tradition. Obviously, if I initiate people into Horsa or Sacred Pentagraph, they can legitimately claim lineage to those traditions. So it's important to realize that tradition goes no further, and lineage really goes no further than the actual initiation ritual of that specific tradition. So you cannot say that you draw on various different traditions and claim lineage to any of those unless you specifically went through all of the initiation requirements and then the initiation ritual of the specific tradition. There is also no such thing as part Horsa, part Sacred Pentagraph, part Gardnerian, part Alexandrian. You are either one or multiple of those things because you have received a legitimate initiation into those things. But you cannot say that you are part this, part that, and part the next thing, or that you have claims to those traditions if you weren't legitimately initiated into those specific traditions. So something I know that Tarot Star often would say is that lineage is a small part of the process, but the mileage and the craft and the experience is also very important. And I think it's important to consider that not all training or requirements that lead up to initiation are necessarily equal. I know that in the early 60s and so on, there wasn't a lot of focus on training before initiation. So many people may have been initiated into a specific tradition, but with very little training before they entered into the tradition. Now, things have changed in our modern times, and a lot more training, I would say, in general, goes into the preparation procedures for somebody before they can become initiated. And that time, as I've mentioned, other videos can span anywhere from a year to 2 or 3 years, even depending on the actual person and often the requirements of the tradition as well. So things have changed, and it's important to understand that lineage doesn't confer mileage, and it doesn't confer experience, and it doesn't confer knowledge. Lineage does something else. Lineage says that you were legitimately initiated through an initiation ritual of a specific tradition. So I remember a post that I read recently where somebody was asked what tradition they belong to, and they said they belong to the BTW tradition. Now I want to make something quite clear for those of you who don't know. British Traditional Witchcraft or British Traditional Wicca is not a tradition. It is actually a group of traditions. So you cannot really say that you belong to BTW tradition because it isn't a tradition on its own. It's merely a group or an umbrella of traditions. In one of my previous videos, I actually went into a bit more detail and I talked about the different branches, and I thought that today might be a good opportunity to talk about that again, because I know that unfortunately in that video that I'm referring to, the slides got corrupted when I was uploading it to YouTube. So I updated my my chart, and I'm going to put this up on the screen now, and I'm going to go through it with you so that you can have a better understanding of what it means when I say BTW or British Traditional Witchcraft. On the right hand side you will see Sybil Leek, who is our lineaged ancestor for the Horsa and Sacred Pentagraph and Gala traditions. Sybil brought from the New Forest area to America Horsa witchcraft or witchy, and out of that was born the Sacred Pentagraph tradition that was created with Sybil Leek together with Charmaine Day and Tarot Star. Out of the Horsa and Sacred Pentagraph tradition came Gala witchcraft. Casey Javinko is the chief elder of the tradition, and this tradition is one for gay men. Now, on the right hand side, I am going to be describing some of the traditions that came from Gerald Gardner. Now, not all of them are strictly classified as British Traditional Witchcraft, but some of them were actually inspired by British Traditional Witchcraft. I'm simply putting them on the diagram so that you can see the various branches and where they were originated or the inspiration for them came from. Now, as some of you may know or be interested to know, the word witchcraft comes from the Old English witchycraft, from witchy, which is the feminine version of a witch, and male witches were called witcher. Out of Gardnerian Wicca came Alexandrian witchcraft, established by Alex and Maxine Sanders. Also Sayex Wicca, established by Raymond Buckland, which was really focused on solitary rites and practices. And then we have the Minoan Brotherhood, which was established by Gardnerian initiates. It's a tradition for gay men. Now, some of the other branches of witchcraft that you may have heard about that are not specifically British traditional are Dianic witchcraft or Wicca. That was formed by Susanna Budapest. That movement focuses on female experiences and empowerment, and it has a very much a feminist influence. Then the Clan of Tubal Cain by Robert Cochrane. It's a mystical in approach, and it shouldn't really be considered to be Wicca or paganism. Out of that came the 1734 tradition that Joe Wilson created from his correspondence with Robert Cochrane. So Joe's teachers were actually Ruth Wynne Owen and Y. Plant Brand. Out of that, I don't want to say comes traditional witchcraft, but many people like to distinguish themselves from Wicca or Witcher by saying that they belong to a branch of traditional witchcraft, which isn't actually specifically related to Cochranism, but that's one way for them to distinguish themselves from witchy and witcher. Then we have eclectic Wicca. Now that term could be a little bit problematic, but that's what many people would refer to this collection of ideas of various spiritualities and cultures and practices that sometimes also would incorporate some ideas of British traditional witchcraft. Then there are also online social and media groups. Some of these are even actually specific to BTW traditions. Usually they are a loose collection of individuals from many different levels of experience who may or may not belong to a specific tradition, but they join online groups like Facebook, Instagram, and so on, and they join a group of individuals. Now, there are also Wicca or Witchcraft 101 groups, and these occur in many different facets. You can have some that originate in witchcraft supply stores or from people who own businesses. They can even be found online, and some traditions will also actually present Witcher 101 classes that may or may not be specific to their traditions. Usually they aren't. Usually if you are seeking initiation, you might be attending a kind of 101 witchcraft lesson, but then that's specifically geared to towards potential initiation, whereas the general Witchcraft 101 classes or workshops are not always related to a specific tradition. It would really give you a very basic understanding of what witchcraft is. So to briefly recap, in order to have a valid and legitimate lineage, the initiation needs to have met community protocols. It needs to be accepted by the community. The person going through initiation should go through the specific tradition's mysteries, and the person receiving the initiation also needs to be initiated into the specific tradition with that specific tradition's initiation ritual. I hope that you have a better understanding of the concept of lineage now. I also hope that you enjoyed learning about British traditional witchcraft as a whole and some of the other traditions that I briefly mentioned. These were by no means exhaustive lists. It's just very general outlines of some of the traditions that exist. As usual, if you found this video useful, please like and subscribe, and I hope you remain well. Blessed be.